Assalamu alaikum. As the press, it is our duty to inform the masses about the changes happening around them. Sometimes a little change goes a long way, and we believe in the power of our voice to inform, educate, and make a real difference. I'm Zaishan Amir, and this is the Fourth Estate. Bilateral ties between the Maldives and China, which can be traced back to the Ming Dynasty, were renewed when the leaders of both countries made mutual state visits in August and September last year. Since then, China-Maldives relations have embarked on an upward trajectory with increased cooperation in various fields and the launching of a number of key developmental projects. To discuss the state of Maldives-China relations and future aspirations, I'm joined by the ambassador of the Maldives to China, Dr. Mohammed Faisal. Dr. Faisal, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. You've been ambassador to China for almost a year now. How has your diplomatic experience been so far?
I think it's been one of success, one of renewed expectations and experiences with the Chinese side. I was very fortunate, as you said, to go to China at a time when our relationship has taken an upward trajectory, and due to the high-level visits of both the presidents, the relationship between the two countries is at a stage that it has never been in the past. Since 1972, when we established bilateral relations, we had very little contact until around 1980s, when, as you can see, the Mali flats were built under Chinese assistance. Since then, the relationship and the mutual contact between the two countries has not been that high. But since the assumption of office by President Jammeh, the relationship between the two countries has reached a milestone of friendly, cordial relations. And due to that, due to those developments, my tenure, which began last November, has been very successful so far. And I've spent the last 9 months making acquaintances, building bridges, networks, and basically finding out my feet in China. As you know, China is a very big country. It's a vast country, most populous country, and also it's a country of different cultures, different people, different varieties. So during the last 9 months, I've been exploring the country and its people, and also making very valuable contacts with key people in the Chinese bureaucracy, and also in Chinese companies and in the business sector.
As I said, Maldives and China first established diplomatic ties in 1972, and since then, of course, there have been numerous high points in this relationship that we have with China. How much weightage must we give to this relationship with China?
I think if you speak of our bilateral relations now, China would be among our top 3 or 4 partners. As you know, India, Sri Lanka, USA, those are our traditional partners. But now China has become one of our key partners, especially in the sphere of economic development. So right now, China would be on top as one of Maldives' very key and friendly partners.
In September last year, the Chinese President, His Excellency Xi Jinping, made a state visit to the Maldives. How significant do you think was his visit to Maldives?
If you look at China-Maldives relations, you can identify 2 periods, which I called B-Xi and A-Xi. So before Xi Jinping and after Xi Jinping, the relationship between the two countries has taken a very good turn since the President's visit to Maldives. And it's not only for the Maldivians, but for the Chinese, from the top leaders to the common man on the street. The visit of President Xi was a very significant moment in the history of our bilateral relations. As you know, China is the most populous and biggest country in the world, and Maldives is relatively very small, insignificant for some people. So for a leader of such a big country to come and visit Maldives on, on an official visit and spend 3 days in Maldives is a very big thing. And it's something that's talked about. I mean, even now when I meet an official or even a common person, the conversation will begin with the visit of President Xi. So it's a very momentous occasion, something that has changed the dynamics of our relationship before and after.
So things have really changed.
Yes, of course.
After the visit,
After
which
the
was
visit.
actually the first visit by a Chinese head of state.
Yes.
It was a remarkable feat. During President Xi's visit in September, he pledged 600 million yuan in free financial aid and also to cover a huge part of the cost for the Malé-Hulé Bridge project, and in addition to investments in 7 different developmental projects. Now, given that there is an unusually high volume of aid that we are getting from China, would it be fair and correct to say that the relationship we share with China is one-sided?
If you talk in terms of relationships, I wouldn't say it's one-sided, because for a relationship to work, both sides have to work as hard as possible. But in terms of exchanges, in terms of monetary value, I would say it's one-sided, because it's a huge amount of foreign aid that we are getting. But that's commensurate to what we've been getting from other countries as well. For example, if you take the UN or other bilateral donors or multilateral donors, we have been receiving a lot of financial aid in the past. What is different in the case of China is they're willing to invest, they're willing to finance projects that are economically important for the Maldives and which are important for the government. So I think that's the main difference. And also you have to look at the way the Chinese economy is developing, also where Chinese foreign aid is going. It's going all across the world. Chinese foreign aid is in Africa, in South America, in Asia, in the Pacific. So this is a time when China is going big, providing a lot of foreign assistance, and also playing the role of a financer of many big projects in different parts of the world. So if you look at it in that perspective, I don't think it's an unfair, it's a one-sided exchange. It will always be balanced, because the relationships between countries have to be balanced, and there will come a point, or there will come a time when it will be balanced somehow. But in terms of finance, of course, it's very one-sided, which is good for Maldives.
Let's go back to 2000. Sino-Maldives economic ties was quite significant, because the total trade was only $3 million back then. But last year, it is estimated that the amount crossed $100 million. So my question is, how can we sustain this partnership in future, and how are we doing it?
I think for us, the most important thing would be to go in a big way to get Chinese private investment and private business. I think the relationship we have bilaterally, government to government, is very good. And if you're talking in business terms, the relationship can be sustained better if we have more relationship between private parties, both Maldivian and Chinese. And also, if you look at the bilateral side, there are some principles that Maldives believes in. For example, the One China policy, which we strongly believes in, and we need to maintain those policies. We need to maintain good international relations with China, supporting. So those are the areas, and those are the ways we can sustain the relationship between the two countries. And if we have a good bilateral relation, I think one of the reasons for the increase in trade between the two countries, as you know, China has been one of the major trading partners with lots of countries for many years. But the recent increase in China-Maldives trade is basically due to the good relationship between the two countries, which in terms will reflect in people-to-people exchanges and in private business. And I think that's the way we can sustain and improve the relationship between the two countries business-wise. And as you know, China is potentially one of the biggest economies in the world, so there's a lot of potential for Maldivian businesses, private
potential superpower
economically as well. So for private business people, China is the ideal place to go and do the business.
A giant country with lots of opportunities, of course. What about tourism? Chinese visitors to the Maldives have, of course, increased manifold over the past few years. And if I remember correctly, Chinese visitors to the Maldives number over 300,000 per year. So, what efforts are being made to increase Chinese tourist arrivals to the country and to sustain this momentum?
It's very true. Maldives is perhaps one of the most popular destinations in China. It's a honeymoon destination. It's an aspirational destination for many Chinese. So if you meet a Chinese person and then you say you're from Maldives, the first expression, the first thing they will say is, "Oh, what a beautiful country! I want to go there." So of course, it's a very popular country, and as you said, since 2010, we have been receiving large number of Chinese tourists, and I think the MMPRC and Maldivian private operators have been doing a fabulous job in attracting those Chinese tourists to Maldives. And also, we have benefited from our free visa policy, as well as expansion of direct air links between Chinese cities and Male. Also, if you look at the Chinese, they are now the world's #1 travelers. For example, last year, close to 100 million Chinese visited overseas, of which more than half were for leisure travel. So there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of areas that the Chinese want to play. They're like explorers. They have lived in these big countries, big, huge countries. So now they want to go outside and see the world.
And there's a growing middle class.
Of course, there's a growing middle class. There's a lot of affluency. So the Chinese want to travel. So one thing that I always say is, it's true a lot of Chinese are coming to Maldives. But we can't be complacent. We have to do a lot of work to maintain our #1 status. Maldives is the #1 destination in South Asia for Chinese, which is a very big thing, because we have India, Bangladesh, Nepal, big countries, a lot of competition. So we'll need to do a lot of work both within China and outside China to market Maldives to affluent Chinese. And the patterns of spending by the Chinese are also changing. It used to be a very family-oriented holiday makers, but now with growing affluence, there's a lot of travelers, couples traveling alone to independently to expensive places. And recently, a survey has shown that the spending is also increasing with the decoupling of the travel from families. So the single couples, they go and spend much more when they're going abroad. So there's changing mechanisms, changing dynamisms in the Chinese market. And they're always discovering new places. So that's also something we have to be aware of. Now the Pacific is very popular. They're going to Mauritius and places like that. They're going to Palau. So these are direct competitors. So we have to always be one step ahead in marketing our product within China to the Chinese people. But of course, for the foreseeable future, I think Maldives will remain one of the most popular destinations for the Chinese.
And there's also great connectivity between the two countries. Of course, we have lots of direct flights now. There are also plans to hold an investment forum in China next month. Can you tell us something about that?
The Maldives Investment Forum is part of the series of showcase events of the Maldives government to showcase investment opportunities in the Maldives. The first one was held in Singapore last year, and the second one is scheduled to be held in Beijing on 15th September, so next month. This has been organized by the Ministry of Economic Development and other government agencies, and the embassy in China. We are providing a lot of coordination and assistance to host this important event. We are targeting for about 800 visitors, and I think this will be a very important forum to bring the Chinese investors and also other investors from other countries, because I believe they're sending invitation to a lot of people around the world. So this will showcase the current investment projects in Maldives and also the potential that is in Maldives for foreign investors, and also show what Maldives is doing now to reform our economy and to become a major powerhouse in the South Asia region.
How confident are you that the forum would be a success, that we would get many Chinese investors to come and invest in our country?
I'm very confident because, as I said, over the last 9 months, I met a lot of Chinese business people, and they're very interested in the Maldives. One thing is the tourism is a byproduct of the tourism interest, but also as an investment, as a country to invest, Maldives is very attractive to them. What we need to do is to go there and show them what they can actually benefit, what they can benefit from being in the Maldives. So I think that's what we are going to do in Beijing, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of uptake on some of the projects that will be showcased at the forum, and I think it will be a big success.
Now let's go back to the Bishi-Aishi equation and reflect on his visit. Back in September, the Chinese president, he visited the Maldives and requested the Maldives to join the 21st century maritime Silk Route, which is envisioned by the Chinese president, Mr. Xi Jinping himself. What does this initiative, the MSR, mean for the Maldives?
I think for the Maldives, first let's just look at the MSR. Personally, I believe it's one of the biggest development initiative of the 21st century, because the MSR does not include just one or two countries. It includes a lot of countries. If you look at the from the land side, it goes from China up to Germany to Holland, and from the sea side, it goes from China to all the way to Africa, East Africa. So it involves a lot of countries, and it also involves a lot of people. It involves a lot of capital. It involves a lot of opportunities for development for these countries. So I think the major benefit for the Maldives will be to partner in such a big scheme that involves more than half of the world's population. So we will gain a lot in terms of investment. And also it is, the MSR is not only economic, it's also a social and cultural concept. So it will also lead to more people-to-people exchanges, cultural exchanges. So in many areas, the Maldives will benefit by being part of the Maritime Silk Route.
Since the day MSR was first mentioned in this country, there have been, of course, vast concerns that the project might ruin or affect Maldives' relations with its South Asian neighbors. What are your views on it?
First of all, as I said, MSR is not an exclusive concept. It's not only exclusive to Maldives or countries or other littoral countries like Mauritius or other countries. It's inclusive. It includes a lot of countries in the world, a lot of countries in Southeast Asia as well. So I don't think any country should be wary or afraid of what this is going to do, because as I said, if Maldives benefits from joining the Maritime Silk Route, and if our infrastructure improves as a result of that, our neighbors will also benefit from that. And also, MSR as a concept, it also involves other initiatives of President Xi Jinping, for example, the Asia Infrastructure Development Bank, the Silk Road Fund. These are all economic initiatives that have been accepted by many countries in the world. Britain is a member of the AIIB, Australia is, New Zealand is.
50 countries.
50 countries, 52. Right?
52.
So there's no issue with that. So why should there be an issue with Maldives being part of the Maritime Silk Route? Because it's purely an economic project. And then we have the other benefits, the collateral benefits from close relationship between people and culture as such. So I don't think any country should be wary of Maldives, or any other country being part of Sri Lanka is also part of it. There's no issue with that. So I think we should look at the positive changes that this massive initiative will bring to our region and also to the global development platform.
Recently, an amendment to the constitution was ratified authorizing foreign ownership of land in the Maldives. This allows individuals or companies to buy land as freehold if they invest $1 billion and reclaim 70% of the land from the Indian Ocean for their project. Of course, the views have been varied on this issue, but I want to know what you think about this amendment?
I fully support it. Many reasons. First thing, from all this, what do we have? What's our biggest asset? It's land. It's the ocean. But what is land if you don't use it, if you don't put it to productive use? And one of the ways we can do it is if people are able to own land, if they can hold freehold rights, if we can give them freehold rights. During my exchanges with investors, they have asked about this even before President Yamin announced this. What would be the initiative? Of course, leaseholding is attractive, 99 years is attractive, but what is more attractive is freehold. If you can have ownership for perpetuity, it's forever. And this is not something new. It's been done in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi they started it recently, in Mauritius they are doing it, they're doing it in Singapore. So I don't see any issue with this. If you look at interest, if you look at interest, if you follow a principle that says that your interest ends and my interest begins, then it's not a win-win principle. Interest should come in a place when your interest and my interest come in a zone that is beneficial for both parties.
When they coincide.
When they coincide. So I think that's the crux of this matter. The countries in our region and beyond should understand that Maldives also has interest. The president has a very ambitious, transformative economic agenda. And for that agenda to succeed, we need bold policies such as this. And we have always been talking about diversifying our economy. We have always been talking about sustainable development. But for Maldives, we don't have that much of resources or capital to go on our own and to build a sustainable economy unless we have something like this, unless we can attract big investors to come in and invest in Maldives. And the policy on freehold rights, it's not an exclusive China-only policy. It's open to Arabs, it's open to Americans, it's open to Africans. Anybody with $1 billion come and reclaim 70%, you get freehold rights. So I think it's an opportunity for the world to come and own a piece of our beautiful country and build a mutual project that's beneficial for them and as well as for the people of the Maldives.
And now when we're talking about owning land in the Maldives, of course, there are concerns that the government did not seek public opinion on the matter. What would you say about that?
I think I don't want to go into the politics as a diplomat. I'll give you a diplomatic answer.
Okay.
I think the president followed what he thought and what the constitution has given him the powers to do what is best for the country. And as a president, as someone in a position of power such as him, I think would look at the maximum benefit and the benefit for the whole country. And I think that's how the decision has been made. In a society, there will be different views. Myself and you would have different views on many things, but that doesn't mean that we can overrule the greater benefit for the whole country. And I think that's how the decision has been made. And I'm not in a position to say that whether it's right or wrong. Personally, I think it's the right decision, and I think the Maldives will reap great benefits once the policy is fully implemented and once we start seeing that kind of investment come into the Maldives.
The President has of course assured that the freeholds will come under the sovereign authority and the rule of law in the Maldives, despite the fact that land will be owned by foreign investors. But what would this move mean for the foreign policy of our country? Because there have been claims that this move might put us in the front line of a Cold War between India and China, the two South Asian giants.
I think the talks of a Cold War is exaggerated. I think we have come too far in global politics to realize that a Cold War is not beneficial to any country. And the reality of the day is that economics leads over everything. For the Maldives, this is purely an economic decision. It's purely a decision made so that our economic policies and our objectives and our mandates can be achieved. So there's no worry of a Cold War between two countries. from something that we do in the Maldives. And as I said, this is open to all countries. So if an investor comes from India and invests in Maldives, would it create problems for China? I don't think so, because if you look at it from a purely economic perspective, there's benefit to the investor and also to the investee. So there's no danger of that. And I think what this will do is strengthen relationship between countries, because if you have a strong business partnership, no matter be it with government or between private parties, this will create more partnership between countries, and it will create opportunities to engage with each other on more level playing field. So I think this will create more positive synergies than the negative ones. And as you know, media has a way of exaggerating things, and I think right now, if you look at the way the world is functioning, there's no opportunity for a Cold War, or for us to be in the middle of a Cold War between any country, for that matter.
You've described the move as something that makes Maldives land free for all. Means Arabs can invest, Africans can invest, and also Indians and Australians, and from wherever they may happen to come from. But Indian media outlets have recently described the amendment as allowing for a Chinese land grab and as a move to strengthen relations with China, despite the fact that India is our immediate and a very close neighbor. They also claim that China has been waiting to put its foot in this region and must have already drawn a map of regions where it wants to buy land in the Maldives. Your comments?
I don't think there's any basis to be afraid of China. If you want to be scared of China, you should already be, because China is one of the top FDI countries in the world. The Chinese companies own major real estate in high streets in London and New York. So you should be afraid of that. Chinese companies own the biggest cinema chain in USA. So you should be afraid that China is appropriating your culture. But no, that's not the case. It's all purely economic investments, and China is going out in a big way to invest, because there's a lot of capital in China that's looking for foreign direct investment, and the government is promoting this as a way of increasing Chinese economic competition across the world. And if you're scared of Chinese land grab, then I think people in Africa, in South America, and all over the world will be very scared of the Chinese, because they're everywhere. They're building railways in Africa, they're building factories in South America, hotels in Africa. So it's not the case. It's just purely money going where there are potential investment opportunities.
Putting money in the right place.
Yes, of course.
There have also been claims that the Maldives is tilted towards China rather than India, because China is keeping away from meddling in the Maldives' domestic affairs, unlike India. Would you believe that this is right?
I don't think there's a tilt. I think Maldives has always had a very balanced foreign policy. We have always been non-aligned. We don't have allies, because if you talk about allies, then you should have an enemy. Mm-hmm. We have always been partners with all the countries in the world, and of course, India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they'll be our most closest of partners, and that will never change. The tilt, if there is any, is in terms of is a result of the economic reality of the day. As I've been saying in the program, we have many projects, we have many opportunities that require a lot of financing, a lot of capital. And China and Chinese companies are willing to come up with that finance, to come up with that capital to invest in Maldives. So naturally, we would be looking at them for that. In terms of meddling, just to go a bit sideways, I think President Jammeh in his speech on Independence Day has articulated Maldives government's position on that we will not accept any country to come and meddle in our affairs. And I think it was a very strong statement. Say, Jaishem, you give me 1,000 rupiah a month, maybe occasionally, but you can't come and ask me how to rearrange my furniture. That won't be accepted. So I think that's a principle that we have to follow. We are a sovereign country. We know how to do things. Of course, we have international commitments through conventions and other agreements, treaties. But we have shown through the UPR process recently that Maldives is doing very well with that. So we will uphold those commitments. But let us do our own work here. Let us run our own country. That's the message of the president. And I think those who talk about meddling should take note of that message and leave us to do our work, and we will honor our commitments, and we will together develop this country.
So meddling or not, there won't be a tilt.
There won't be a tilt. There is not a tilt. The tilt is, as I said, it's an economic. Where there's money, Maldives will go, just like any other country. I'll give you an example. During the recent visit of Prime Minister Modi to China, Indian companies signed agreements worth more than $22 billion with Chinese companies, private companies. So if Indian companies can go to China and sign agreements for $22 billion, why can't a Maldivian company or Maldivian government go and get a fraction of that money from China without any questions being asked? No questions should be asked. So it should be on an equal basis.
What steps should we take to ensure that our growing ties with China do not affect our ties with our neighbors, especially India? Because of course there has been some tension between the Maldives and India, given the recent developments that we have witnessed in the past few months.
I think India and Maldives, we are like family members.
India is our big brother.
India is our big brother, and as family members, we have our spats, we have our issues. And of course, we sit down and talk about it, and we sort it out. And I think that's the way our relationship has been all along. And we will always consider India to be one of our most closest and partners, and we will always listen to India. But I think all countries should realize that in a globalized world, we have to give equal attention or equal opportunities for all countries to come and be partners with us. We can't be exclusive, we can't be mutual. So I think that's the base, that should be the basis of our relationship with any country. The relationship we have with India shouldn't be a problem for Sri Lanka. The relationship we have with China shouldn't be a problem for Japan, for example. So I think that's the basis of good international relations. And I think the Indian government would understand that, and they do understand it. Sometimes it's the media that blows this up and makes issues out of this. And I think as long as we are, India and Maldives will be one of the closest international partners.
Now let's move to the global side of things. How similar or different do you think the Maldives and China are when it comes to their stance on international issues?
Internationally, I think one of the key similarities is that we both support a reform of the UN, especially increasing the role of small countries, small developing countries in SIDS, as well as other developing countries in UN decision making, and as well as reforming UN to a more 21st century organization that is more pro-development and which can impact the lives of more people and which can play a more better peacekeeping role, for example. And also, if you look at the environment side, recently there has been very positive developments from China, especially after the visit of President Obama. I remember it's last November. China is going in a big way towards assisting or towards realizing the importance of environmental protection. And I think Maldives and China both share the concerns that we have of, regarding global warming and to find a way, mutual way, inclusive way of dealing with the global issues of environment issues as well as global security issues. So there are many similarities internationally in how we look at or how we see international issues.
Now you have a PhD in developmental studies, so I want to ask you, now the Maldives, we were among the world's poorest countries some 10 or 20 years ago, and at that time we were in the list of UN's least developed countries, but now we have graduated to the level of a middle income country, which is a good sign. Our development statistics also continue to be among the best regionally. If you look at life expectancy, infant mortality rates, we are doing quite well in that domain. From a developmental perspective, what do you think is the reason or secret behind the Maldives' success story?
I think we have to give a lot of credit to our previous governments, especially the government of President Maumoon. As you have rightly said, Maldives started from a very weak position. From our GDP being in just 3 digits, it has now gone to over 600,000 GDP. I think the main reason was we have been very prudent in following international guidelines and also seeking foreign, especially from our multilateral donors, assistance, and also using our own resources, especially after the growth of the tourism industry, and using that to improve our standards of living, especially in the area of social development, where we see the best social indicators in the region. After Sri Lanka, we have the best social indicators. Also, we should give credit to our private businesses, especially in the tourism industry. They have contributed a lot to the development of Maldives, and that is one of the reasons why Maldives is now in the upper middle income status of the UN. And together, both private and government, with the limited resources we have, we've been able to turn around our negative development indicators into positive ones. And even if you look at the MDGs, Maldives is one of the best performing in the region. And
5 out of 8.
5 out of 8. So the successive governments have done a good job with it. And also, I think the people of Maldives, if you look at social indicators, education, health, as a people also we have strived very hard to achieve those standards, especially in education over the past 30 or 40 years. So together as a nation we have done well, but now we have to go beyond that, and that's why we need a transformative economic agenda, because from here, for the next 10, 20 years, we need big changes in our economy to bring about positive changes, and also to realize the visions of our government, of our leaders, to double our GDP in the next 10 years. So there's much more to do. We have achieved much, but we can't rest on our laurels. But there's a fair way to go for us to become a developed country and to give our people a standard of living that is commensurate to what you find in, say, Singapore or Dubai. We can do it. Together we can do it.
What are your hopes for the post-2015 developmental agenda of the United Nations?
I think if you look at the MDGs, one of the areas that personally for me that didn't work was the partnership for development, Goal 8.
Building global partnerships.
And I think if you look at the past history, private parties, for example, let's take the Bill Gates Foundation. I think they have done much more than countries in building partnerships and providing
Bill and
Melinda together. So those kind of things, I think that's an area that when you look at the SDGs, that's an area we have to look harder and find ways big countries and small countries can come together and work towards a mutual self-development. The MDGs has been successful. For example, if you look at poverty alleviation, the world has done well. But in terms of the global partnership needed for a real transformative change, I don't think that has come over the past 15 years. So that's an area that the world has to work harder. This is my personal belief, not the government's. The next would be environment. I think we need to. We had doubts about the global warming things, but right now, if you live in this moment, we know what's happening with the Earth, and I'm sure with the SDGs, we will get the impetus needed to create better mechanisms to deal with these issues and come up with solutions for the planet.
As the final question, what is your vision for Sino-Maldives relations?
My vision would be that we remain as close as we are now and enhance our partnerships, especially in terms of exchange of people. because in the long run, what will sustain our partnership would be the relationship between the two peoples. Tourism is one area that can do it. The other areas, culture and sports and things like that. And my vision would be that we have enhanced exchanges of culture and sports exchanges, because that's an area that we aren't doing much now. So for me, China-Maldives relationship will be very rosy, and it will keep growing for many years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal, for joining us tonight. It's been a very insightful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
This is me, Shinami, signing off, hoping to return next week to discuss yet another issue of national and social importance. Thank you for watching and have a very pleasant evening.